In this section, we are going to take a look at the Gilded Age. Gilded is when you take kind of a base, cheap metal and you cover it with a shiny exterior. They called this the Gilded Age because we have this shiny exterior of wealth and power covering this kind of base situation for the majority of the population, which was either living at or below the poverty line. For the essential question, we're going to be looking at comparing strategies and tactics of captains of industry on one side, and a captain of industry just means business owner, rich person, the wealthy, and the labor movement on this side. And labor means workers, which means we're going to be looking at the workers' unions and how workers try to protect themselves from the abuses of the captains of industry. The Gilded Age actually starts from the Civil War. All of those labor contracts that were given out to the industries to build things like bullets and bombs and guns and uniforms and all that stuff, all that money was shoveled into the northern industry, and that money is going to fuel a second industrial revolution. Big business emerges out of the Civil War, and they immediately tried to form monopolies or merge together into big business. Monopolies means one company, right? Mono, one company controls all of the product in a given area. So if you wanted to buy oil, you had to buy out from the Standard Oil Company. If you wanted to buy steel, you bought it from U.S. Steel. When there's only one option for your purchase, that's going to exploit consumers. And if there's only one place to work, that's going to exploit the working class. Exploitation means to take advantage of or to use, right? So the rich people are going to be exploiting the working class so that they can make themselves more wealthy. One of the shiny exteriors, though, is some of the technical innovations. There's new things like telephones and typewriters, new machinery that's going to make things like sewing easier. The telephone and the typewriters are going to be used in order to create more service jobs, and these service jobs are going to eventually be referred to as women's work because women tended to do them. Rather than swinging a sledgehammer, which requires a lot of brute physical force, or pouring molten steel or whatever, these service jobs are more about communication and they're more about interacting with people. Things like the telephone and the typewriter are going to allow women to become secretaries. They're going to become office managers, nurses, teachers, right? These are the kind of service works that they're going to be doing. A second type of technological innovation is the creation of electricity, or the harnessing of electricity is probably the better way to say that. Electricity is great. This is a picture of Bradford, Pennsylvania, where they make Pennzoil. I grew up near Bradford. There's no major water source that would turn a water wheel. There's not a lot of coal deposits, which would fuel power plants, or that they could be used to make steam power. So with the advent of electricity, it allows factories to develop where there previously was not the ability to have a factory. It increases productivity because you can actually build more stuff now and you can power more machinery. And that's great. Increased productivity, good. The problem for the workers is you can also power light bulbs. And once you can power light bulbs, it increases the working hours. So it's not uncommon for workers to be expected to work 10, 12, 14-hour days with the advent of electricity. You can put a star next to a technical innovation that you think is going to help those captains of industry become captains. How do the rich people get rich based on those technical innovations? Now, we're going to use a lot of synonyms here. Corporations, big business, monopolies. Eventually, the word trust is going to become a synonym for all that. Corporations, or these big businesses of the Gilded Age, have a lot of protections. You can see this knight here is fighting against the working class man, and it has a lot of protections the working class doesn't. A corporation has limited liability, meaning limited responsibility. If you are a board member of a corporation and that corporation goes bankrupt, you don't have to dip into your personal wealth in order to pay the debts. It's all up to the corporation or whatever the corporation has. And corporations can make huge amounts of money by selling stock on the open market. They offer to share a portion of their business with people. Then those people give huge amounts of money and may raise massive amounts of money to the corporation for that, which then goes on to pay those wealthy people their personal wealth. Corporations have perpetual life, which means if a CEO or a board member dies, the company doesn't go away. They find a new CEO or a board member. So corporations can go on forever. When Sam Walton dies, Walmart's still going to be there. And legally, corporations are people. A business, say for example, Hobby Lobby, who back during the Obama administration sued the government over the Affordable Care Act, because the Affordable Care Act required that businesses provide birth control for their employees. Hobby Lobby said, as a Christian organization, it has the rights of personhood and does not have to do something that violates its religious belief. So the corporation of Hobby Lobby had First Amendment freedom of free speech, freedom of religion protection, and did not have to provide that state mandated requirement. Similarly, with the right to free speech, McDonald's has the same right to free speech. Now, they don't have physical mouths, but the corporation can donate money, which the Supreme Court in Citizens United said money equals free speech for politics. So they can donate however much money they want. So they have the legal rights of personhood, perpetual life, abilities to make huge amounts of money, and they don't have a responsibility. The individual people that make up the boards don't have any responsibility to pay off those debts. The most important business organization of this era, though, is the monopoly. Now, monopolies probably have always existed, but in the Gilded Age, monopolies became kind of the working idea here. Monopoly, again, tries to eliminate competition because it wants to get down to one group that controls all of the competition, right? Controls everything. If you see here, this is the Standard Oil Company, and it's become a big, beautiful rose because it's eliminated all the competitors. So all of the stuff is funneling up to that big, beautiful rose. Meanwhile, John Rockefeller here has been pruning off his competition through dirty business tactics and hostile takeovers and buying out competition and undercutting markets in order to make sure his company wins. So the reason that monopolies wanted to eliminate competition was because competition allows lower prices. The company has to provide a better product. They have to pay their workers well. But if they're a monopoly, they can increase price without giving a better product. In fact, the product could be bad and people still have to buy it because there's no other option. They also can treat the worker poorly because the worker doesn't have any other options about where to go. So some people started referring to these captains of industry, these wealthy individuals that wanted to be seen as noble, as steering the economy. They started to refer to them as robber barons, somebody that stole their wealth from the poor. So the reason that the rich are rich is because they took the money from the poor. They're kind of like the anti-Robin Hood. Robin Hood stole from the rich to give to the poor. The robber barons steal from the poor to make themselves wealthy. All right, one of the very rich people that we need to remember is John Rockefeller. John Rockefeller used horizontal integration, where he bought up all of the other oil companies in an area to make himself have a monopoly. So company A, B, C, D, they all merged together to join into this one big super company. He referred to this as a trust because all of those smaller companies trusted him that he would make a profit. So they gave him power. They merged their companies in with his. The other form of monopoly is best seen through Andrew Carnegie and his idea of vertical integration. Carnegie used a new steel technique called the Bessemer process. He was selling steel to the railroads and to city skyscraper construction. So he was lucky in that there's a huge demand for his steel. And then he vertically integrated, which means he bought every step along the way. So if he needed iron ore, he bought an iron ore mine. And in doing so, he didn't have to pay anybody else a profit for that uh, that product. Okay. Carnegie also developed this theory called the gospel of wealth. Now, the gospel of wealth is Carnegie's belief that God made him superior to all other people. That's why he was wealthy. But God didn't make him superior to other people just to become wealthy. It was so that he could then take care of the poor. You see, this is based on something called social Darwinism. Social Darwinism was an effort by the rich people to justify their wealth. And they wanted to make sure that the government didn't try to step in and regulate them or control them in order to help the poor people, right? So the wealthy people said, God made us superior. God made it so that we will rise to the top. It's based on this concept of Darwinism. Darwinism is the theory of natural selection. That's how evolution works, that the most positive traits for an environment will be passed on, and eventually that leads to evolution. Social Darwinists believe that God made certain people superior, and the way that you can tell they're superior is by their wealth. Now, it just happens to be that all of these superior social Darwinists were white men, which is weird. I mean, they did build a society in 1890 that was based on segregation in the South, and they sort of built the rules to make sure that they were going to win, and then they blamed the other people for losing. Now, the wealthy know best according to social Darwinism, and they have all the money, so they need to take care of the poor, and they don't do this by making money and then giving it to the government in taxes so that the government and the people can decide the best way to use that money. No, the people that get to decide what's best for society is the wealthy themselves. So they will give that money out in the forms of charity, also called philanthropy. So Carnegie is going to build concert halls and libraries, and Rockefeller is going to build parks, and they're going to do all of these other things. They're going to give away a lot of their money to justify the fact that they're wealthy. Now, that cartoon that I showed you before, where it talks about the Standard Oil Company being, as an effort to eliminate competition and create a monopoly, the district likes to misinterpret this cartoon, and they talk about this as social Darwinism, that Standard Oil was the best company, so therefore it got to be the biggest and most powerful. It overlooks the fact that Rockefeller didn't necessarily have the best product, didn't necessarily have the best prices. Rockefeller was, eliminating competition through dirty business tactics. But businesses, like people, try to justify their power and wealth by arguing that they were the best fit for the environment. And I think it's important to remember, too, that eliminating competition is not a capitalist idea. It's actually opposite of capitalism. Capitalism requires, free markets, open exchange and trade of goods. But if you're eliminating competition through these dirty business tactics and through market capture, that's not capitalism. That's just greed. Now, highlight something that you think is an important tactic for the captains of industry. The Gilded Age is marked by what we refer to as laissez-faire capitalism. This is a very specific type of capitalism. It's laissez-faire, which roughly translates to hands off. That the government should keep its hands off business. That the government, which is made up of politicians and not wealthy people necessarily, shouldn't be in the business of regulating business. They shouldn't be trying to control business. The people that know the business best, the people that should be in charge of the economy, are wealthy people. And what that means in practice is that there's almost no intervention for workers or consumers, which means there's almost no protection for workers or consumers. This is the policy throughout the Gilded Age. The United States government largely kept their hands off. Or did they? Federal contracts were going to the wealthy. Also, those big business owners who were superior to all others and knew everything about the economy, they also did go to the government and beg for a tariff. And if you remember, a tariff is a tax on imported goods because the owners were terrified of foreign competition. That's kind of the government getting involved. So they're not really asking for the government to keep its hands out of the economy. They just don't want the government doing anything that's going to restrict them or to protect consumers. They only want the government to protect the owners. They don't want the government to help the workers or the consumers at all. Now, the owners are going to want the tariff, the tax on imports, to prevent foreign competition. Workers think that that will at least keep their jobs in the United States. If the businesses are successful, they'll at least have work. So the workers support the tariff, and the politicians, well, they like the tariff because it's going to provide tax revenue. What I think is really interesting is that the party that is now doing this is the Republican Party. So in 1860 and 1870, the Republicans were the party of the freedmen. By 1880 and 1890, the Republicans have become the party of big business. In other words, they're the party of nothing's free, man. Place a circle around a Gilded Age federal policy that you think supports big business.